Hi everyone, it's Victor speaking. And this is the time of the year when we need to start preparing for 2022. So I'm making this video so you can prepare well in advance. And I will be also making a general forecast for each sign as well, which will be released in a couple of weeks' time. So stay tuned, make sure you ring the notification bell, subscribe to the channel so you can see the information I have got to share with you. Now, this is going to be a part 1 and part 2 video. In part 1, I'm going to be looking at the nodal changes and the Jupiter-Neptune cycle. In part 2, I'm going to be looking at the Mars retrograde period, Jupiter in Aries, and the Jupiter conjunction to Chiron as well, and then how that might be playing out on a collective and on a personal level as well. Now, for the individual signs, I will be breaking it down from love perspective, work, money, and health from those perspectives overall. Yes, so it will be something which I'm trying to make as unique as possible for everyone. So I'm going to be looking at what happens from a 10th house perspective, how many signs away some of the planets will be, what does that indicate in your work, what you should be preparing. Of course, it's going to be not entirely precise because we need to be looking at your personal chart also. So if that's your intention to prepare in the best possible way for 2022, then I recommend booking a reading on AstroViktor.com, either with myself or Sweti. So as I mentioned in this video, we will be covering Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, the nodal changes, typically because it's a huge topic. So I want you not to be sitting here for hours because I probably will be able to speak about for 4 or 5 hours. And I know we have no such amount of time in our pocket. So we will be spending now 45 minutes together. Now, the year actually starts with Venus retrograde, but I have made an intense video about it. So check that out. I will be putting the link on the screen now. Now, when we look at the collective, we always have to be looking at planetary cycles. Now, planetary cycles can be happening between 2 inner planets and 2 outer planets, or 1 inner planet and an outer planet. And what the difference between them is that some are indicating shorter period of influences and some will be indicating longer periods. Now, think about it this way. If you have got 2 personal planets having a new cycle, and the new cycle is always talking about conjunctions. So imagine that we've got the Sun and the Mars conjunction happening right now in the sky. Now, that is indication of a 2-year cycle. But the problem with these short cycles that it is never able to finish something really, because it is a short amount of time. So what really makes the huge changes in our lives are the outer planetary cycles. So imagine, for instance, a Saturn and the Pluto conjunction, which happened in 2020. Now that cycle is long. That's a 35, 40-year cycle. So it has got time to develop and make the necessary changes, okay? So therefore, we're gonna be having a very unique new cycle starting with the Jupiter and Neptune conjunction, which is going to be taking place on 12th of April 2022. And this is talking about a 13-year cycle altogether. Now, but before we jump right onto that, I wanted to look at the very last Saturn and Uranus final aspects. You know that they have been squaring each other for a very long time. We can feel it since 2020. Now, the very first square happened on 14th of February. Then the second one was on 14th of June. And the very last one was on 24th, or the very last one is going to be happening on 24th of December. Now, we made plenty of video about it, not just me, but some of my other colleagues as well. One of the reasons why I wanted to start with this, because this aspect is still going to be within orb till March, April 2022. Now, Saturn and Uranus have got a 45-year cycle, and then they're going to be making 4 major aspects within that 45 years. So meaning that there is going to be a square at one point, an opposition, another square before a new conjunction happens. Now, this cycle started in 1988. That's when the Saturn-Uranus were in conjunction. And then the new conjunction is going to be happening in 2032. So, of course, this is a pivotal moment because we've got the 3rd square going on. The last time when we had any interaction between the 2 planets were in 1999 and 2000. The very last aspect they made was 24th of December 2000. Now, I'm not going to go back into the history. You can do that yourself. You can look at what was going on in 2000. I don't think I need to tell you. You guys do know that there were some financial crisis situation and so forth. But Saturn and Uranus square is very much about the desire to break free from something. It could talk about the worsening of medical conditions, bits and bobs, which are kind of hard to believe. But the idea about it is to restore some type of order in our lives. And if you look at that Uranus in the sign of Taurus, it's not happy there, right? According to modern astrology, Uranus has got some very great energy going on in the sign of Scorpio. That's the exalted position. And Taurus is the opposite sign. So it means that this is the fall position of Uranus. So Uranus is working, and if you think about it, why it does make sense. Taurus is about stability, and Uranus is about Saturn upside downs, and it doesn't like stability. It likes wandering about. It likes going around and then bring electrifying situations into our life. So Uranus in Taurus definitely wants us to change our value. This is the square, which I think indicating that we do need to prepare for changes. And probably these are unusual changes, sudden unexpected events in our life. Now, no wonder why we have all these type of COVID situations, because Uranus is the awakening. So it wants us to awaken for something. Now, they are going to be having the very last square happening on 11 degree. And what's interesting about that chart is that Jupiter will be on 29 degree of Aquarius. So now Saturn in Aquarius could talk about very great scientific advances, but it could be very cold, very detached and rigid as well. Uranus in Taurus is very keen to upset financial situations, and it wants to kind of promote an earth-centered change when it comes to economy, agricultural type of situations. So it shakes things up. No wonder why we've got all these food supply issues going on, or petrol issues at the moment, which I think is just the start of it. Now, in the Saturn-Uranus square chart, I also noticed that Ceres will be on 29 degree of Taurus also. So hopefully, on one hand, it talks about the solution, what the government trying to come up with for food supply, agricultural type of issues, getting back to normal, how ways we earn money and so forth. But 29 degrees is a critical degree. So before things are going to be getting better, probably there is going to be some type of chaos or crisis situation going on at the same time. Now, don't forget that Jupiter is also on 29 degree of Aquarius too, which is kind of talking about the restrictions when it comes to our own freedom. So I feel like 2022 overall is the year of finishing. Now, we know that in 2021, Pluto played a very significant part of what was going on, and Pluto is still in the sign of Capricorn. But remember, in 2022, Pluto will be also hitting 29 degree as well. So the very last effort from Pluto to kind of destroy some of the old structures and build basically a new community, new ways, new approaches to look at the world from 2023 onwards. So I really believe that 2022 is kind of like the year of endings on one hand, but of course the year of a new start as well. Now, if you break it down, think about it this way, from a tarot perspective, number 20 is the world card, right? And number 22 is something to do with the Fool. So overall, the decisions we can be making this year can really impact the world and really impact us on an individual level also. Now, the very first aspect which I would like to speak about in regards to 2022 is the biggest one probably, and that's going to be the Neptune-Jupiter cycle. Now, it happens every 13 years. So the very last one we had was in 2009, but it happened in the sign of Aquarius. The very last Neptune-Jupiter conjunction happened in 1856, which I believe it was called as the Hungry War period. So there were some food supply issues going on. But I don't want to be negative. I don't want to be mentioning that it's going to be a civil war. You know, I think it's already happened in 2021 anyway, which was, you know, just not necessarily the most visible one. Now, I think the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction is the collective insanity. So one of the negative side of that is that I think like sheeps, we are running after something. Or imagine when especially my dogs, when I throw a ball for them, and they are running after it like there is no tomorrow, like chicken without heads. And I think this Neptune-Jupiter conjunction is this kind of chicken without heads running around syndrome. Yes, it talks about salvation. It talks about the savior arriving into our life. But I also feel like there is kind of like this brain modification process behind, because we are blinded. We put our faith into something. Jupiter is the planet of faith, and Neptune is the veil, which actually we pull down on our eyes. So one of the things is, which I think it will mean in 2022, that there needs to be this collective spiritual awareness, this collective spiritual awakening, right? Because if we put our beliefs into something and then we start being obsessive about it and then follow it, because let's say we are scared to death, you know, it might be a problem. For those who are more spiritually inclined, I think the Neptune-Jupiter cycle is actually quite good, and it might take you to a different path or a different journey when it comes to your spiritual awakening. So the blind faith in something is one of the biggest negativity of this Jupiter and Neptune conjunction. Okay, now so on a positive note, it might be about starting to study about spirituality, how to stay connected and tuned to the divine, learning more about yourself, opening your or broadening your horizon. I think it's going to be key words to this conjunction. Seeing things clearly is something which needs to happen. So as I mentioned, Neptune, Jupiter has got this 13-year cycle, but this time around, we've got the conjunction happening around the 8th to 12th of April 2022. Now, because Jupiter and Neptune are both associated with cultural matters, probably we can say that somehow our cultural experiences will be changing. So it could impact very positively the film industry. Maybe new films, of course there are going to be new films. So I probably am not saying anything new, but new types of film might be coming in, or there is going to be a new era for pop culture, or oil industry can be very much affected. I think the oil prices will go up very significantly. Or this could also indicate something around the art industry. Maybe art is coming back in one way or another, maybe, you know, the exhibitions and all those type of things. So because Jupiter and Neptune altogether is kind of like this 3D type of vision. So, you know, maybe the art is going to be more 3D related and so forth. So I really kind of see new ways of marketing your businesses, for instance, and so forth. Now, Pisces is very much associated with the past or dreams or vision. Altogether, it's very much about cosmology, spirituality. So, of course, this cycle happened last in 2009, but that's more about the public. So that might be about some type of renewed compassion at large from the public, right? But this time around, and of course, Neptune and Jupiter together is very much about media, the music industry. So I kind of feel like there is going to be this upgrading energy around music, okay? Probably hip hop will be something which is going to be huge. Now, I'd like to point out that, yes, in 1856, when Jupiter and Neptune were in conjunction in the sign of Pisces, well, that was actually the emerge of the blues music, okay? And that was kind of like the birth of the American music. So music is going to be something huge, which is good for investments in 2022. Why is that? Because Neptune is the higher octave of Venus, so plenty of money. And Jupiter is the planet of abundance, right? So plenty of new music. Probably it's going to be good to be a music recorder or something like that. New talents on the horizon. They're going to be very impressive. Probably new talent shows will be coming up and so on. But Neptune also talks about aliens. So I might believe that there is going to be some secret stuff coming out in regards to the aliens, or maybe the film industry is going to be more focused on aliens and the supernatural type of things or spiritual type of things and so forth. And if we go back a little bit in history, as I said, the last conjunction happened in 2009. Well, that was a massive year in the film industry because it was about Vampire Diaries, Twilight coming in, Harry Potter, the avatars, and all those type of things. So that's the kind of like the supernatural type of things with the Aquarius elements it brings in. So this time around, maybe these spiritual topics in the film industry, in the music, mentioning something around the collective will be very emphasized. Now, Jupiter and Neptune on a personal level is probably about self-development. Because it's about, as I mentioned, collecting to the divine, in a sense. Neptune represents the cosmic womb. So reconnecting with my inner self, in a sense, understanding more about the esoteric principles, having a broader mind, looking at bigger concepts, coming up with some abstract ideas as well, and then how we will be integrating those into our belief system, which is Jupiter. Of course, both planets could be talking about travels. So Jupiter is foreign travels, Neptune is something to do with ocean and ship travels and cruises and all those type of things. So maybe one of the new ways people will be traveling is on ships. But Neptune is also the planet of dreams, meditation, psychic revelations. So on a personal level, we can become very dreamy about the topic of your life, where it's going to be conjuncting. Of course, maybe if it's in your 11th house, then, you know, how to make money from work, which I do. Or maybe it's in the 7th house, then how I will be having this princess ending story type of relationship matters and so forth. But one thing we need to be very careful is to have realistic expectations. So what is your target? how I will get to that target. Jupiter and Neptune together is very much about visualization. So it does talk about the possibility of achieving anything you want in your life. Just make sure it's realistic as well at the same time. I do believe when it comes to Jupiter and Neptune, altogether, it does tell you to be very cautious when it comes to business dealings, okay? Because you can easily miss important details, or you just jump into something which you regret later on. Or this combination really could talk about generosity, being more charitable, you know, taking into account other people's feelings. So it does talk about some type of cosmic unity which need to happen within people. And eventually, of course, it can bring some growth, happiness, and success. Okay, so kind of helping the underprivileged people might be a focal point with this Jupiter and Neptune. Now, the large Jupiter and Neptune conjunction brought huge floods, especially in France. Okay, so extreme weather conditions are very possible. Jupiter rules rain overall, Neptune rules seas and oceans. So the floods can be actually extreme this time around in 2022. We need to be aware of that. You know, with Neptune and Jupiter conjunction, it's, as I said, it's like a freebie reality type of situation. So maybe the reality shows will be actually hitting the TV even more because people will be hungry for that. But what is the reality? You know, I, for instance, watched this reality show called The Circle, which is about, on a deeper level, I think it talks about how the social media affects our life, who we can become on Twitter and Instagram and all this type of channels. And we post whatever we want. We look at, I mean, New York, you know, I mean, on the plane traveling somewhere, and then you're only holding the toilet seat, which looks like the window of the plane, right? I've seen that somewhere on Facebook once. So Neptune and Jupiter conjunction definitely tells you that what you see is not always the reality, and you need to be seeing things behind. Now, this conjunction is going to be taking place on 23 degrees of Pisces. So from a decan perspective, actually that's a Scorpio decan. Plus, it falls onto Sagittarius dwat. So something around the depth of our optimism is very magnified here. If you have got anything around 23 degrees in your personal chart, then this year could be very prominent for you. Now, I made another video about the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction. So if you are interested in that, I link that onto the screen now, so you can have a look. I went a little bit more about the possibilities and the history as well. So I don't want to be repeating myself, but what I want to mention is that this conjunction is on 23 degrees of Pisces. Why is that important for us? Because at the same time, the North Node and the South Node will be on 23 degrees as well in the sign of Taurus. So Jupiter on 23 degrees Pisces, Neptune on 23 degrees Pisces, North Node 23 degrees Taurus, South Node 23 degrees Scorpio. Wow, there is too much 23 degrees going on. So maybe worth having a look at what 23 degrees actually indicates for us. Now, I'm not a numerologist, so I can only tell you what I believe is number 23 is about. But I think 23 represents a compassionate essence, expressing a personal sense of freedom. I think it's a creative number. When we add the two numbers up, it's all about team focus. It talks about diplomatic solutions to obstacles. I think it's a little bit of a wittiness. It's very adventurous altogether. So how I see this Neptune-Jupiter conjunction is that I think there is going to be this massive ways of wanting to travel to different places. Now, if we look at it from the tarot perspective, that's number 5, which is the Hierophant. Now, Hierophant, in a positive way, would talk about spiritual wisdom, religious beliefs, conformity, traditions, and institutions, but also to talk about your personal beliefs, freedom, how we challenge the status quo. So on the Hierophant card, you see this religious figure sitting between 2 pillars of a sacred temple. And by the way, this is also known as the Pope or the teacher archetype in the tarot decks. Okay, and this person actually wears 3 robes: red, blue, and the white one. And I think it kind of talks about how the 3 worlds is actually operating. So the conscious, the subconscious, and the superconscious part, what it really talks about. So definitely the spirituality, the church type of energy is really coming here on a collective level. Now, is it because people are going to go back to the church? Is it because people are going to start believing in something very strongly? So this number 23 and number 5 really truly describes the essence of this Jupiter and Neptune conjunction as well. So I really find that very fascinating. Now, I think altogether, this Jupiter and Neptune is very much about the big global gains, what it's going to be talking about the most. Why is that? Because the nodal changes will be happening in Taurus and Scorpio, and those are money signs. Now, I dived into it a little bit deeper, and then I started looking at certain countries, which is going to be affected the most. And I think United Kingdom will be affected significantly because this conjunction is on, I mean, they've got Chiron on 23 degree of Taurus. And of course, that's where the North Node will be. Then they have got Mars on 23 degree as well, in a different chart. So that's going to be very significant. I also saw Australia, which is going to be having Sun on 23 degree Cancer. United States, who have got Venus on 23 degree Taurus. France, who has got Uranus 23 degree Taurus. And also Israel, which has got Sun on 23 degree. I think these countries will be affected very strongly. Now, I think because there is so many energies going on 23 degree, so the financial axis with that Pisces and Jupiterian connection, the financial world will be one of the things which will be impacted the most. Okay, so we might believe in something, we're investing into something, and then eventually maybe there is this huge awakening around, should I have done that? Should I not have done that? So it can really go 2 ways, right? Also, the Scorpio Taurus axis really talks about the economic situation, right? So we are very hopeful about some type of economic situation. Maybe we shouldn't be so hopeful about. I think money laundering is going to be very significant from 2022 onwards. And I think plenty of people will be arrested because of money schemes and so forth. But also the Scorpionic side could talk about something around prostitution as well. So maybe Jupiter and Neptune will bring us some type of new legislations around, you know, ways of doing prostitution and all those type of things. I also believe that this is going to be affecting what type of bonds we make, what type of alliances we make. Even it could be indication of how the relationship is going to be working out, romantic relationships. Because let's not forget, Scorpio, Taurus is till death do us apart, right? Whether we're rich or poor, we're gonna stay together. So I think it might be new legislations around who can get married, who cannot get married, and all those type of things. I think that's going to be very significant as well. Now, yes, so some type of political situation, political sex scandals, or anything to do with child abuse, pornography, money laundering act. Probably I'm expecting for some type of changes around that. I do believe still there is a feminine power rising here. Because all these signs getting triggered here is feminine energies. So I can imagine something will be happening to a female in one of those countries which I listed there. The reason being is because Jupiter is the regality energy, right? And Neptune could talk about losses. But also Scorpio is very much about death and rebirth and something to do with our letting go. So I think maybe some political restructuring, maybe a female leader is going to be popping in one of those countries I listed above is very possible. On a positive note, I think this might be bringing in something to do with past life regressions, Reiki, healing ways, or stuff like that. I think it might be something which is going to be blooming significantly. So also it's worth investing into those if you want to be studying something. And maybe there is going to be some type of new revolutionary ways or new technology introduced around those as well, how we can do that. Neptune and Jupiter together, I think it could talk about the TV industry. So there might be some of these TV shows about psychic people and so forth. Maybe it's actually a good idea to do that. Neptune, Jupiter together could talk about your sleep patterns. So maybe it's some type of technological advancement. So when it comes to how to interpret dreams and you know, those REM state and all those type of things, tarot, channeling, and all those type of things might be something which is going to be rising significantly. Now, as I mentioned, Neptune-Jupiter cycle can talk about the media. So I'm just wondering, is YouTube going to be blooming or YouTube going to be going to start dying? But it can go really to the extremes, right? The floods, I mentioned that it's very possible that it's going to be happening in Europe, especially. Now, another thing which I'd like to mention now that Neptune is something to do with oceans and seas. So projects around oceans and seas, travel possibilities, or extra water, or how we drink water, or how we clean our water could be a significant topic. But let's just think about what do we have in water? Fishes. So are we not going to have enough fish? And therefore the prices of the fish will be actually increasing significantly. So these are some of the topics which I'd like to mention when it comes to the Neptune-Jupiter cycle. And as I mentioned, I made a video about that previously, so I recommend checking that out. Now, there will be 4 eclipses in 2022. One of them is at the end of April, which is a solar eclipse on 10 degrees of Taurus. And we're going to be having a lunar eclipse in the sign of Scorpio on 25 degrees. And that's going to be on May 16th. Then another solar eclipse on 2 degrees of Scorpio, which is in October 25th. And the last lunar eclipse of the year is on 1 degree of Taurus on in November 8th. So one of the things which we do need to do when we look at the eclipses, what did it bring 19 years before? So I went through the last 20 lunar nodes, actually, in the sign of Taurus and Scorpio, just to look at how many connected, for instance, for recessions, and how many had, some financial issues. And only 5 of the recessions out of 20 related to the nodal changes into Taurus and Scorpio. One of the reasons why I wanted to mention this is because obviously plenty of us believe that there might be very significant issues around money next year. And don't get me wrong, I mean, it's very possible that there is going to be, as I mentioned before, but maybe not necessarily, not necessarily as a huge one, which I'm expecting to be happening sometimes in 2026. Now, one of the reasons why I believe that there is going to be some issues, because I made a little bit of a research, which I would like to share for you now, and it's going to be on the screen. So I collected all the primary recession years, and I put down where the nodes were and also where Jupiter was, and I found a very interesting correlation between them two. So starting in 1776 and then 1794, you can see it was Leo. Then it shifted into Cancer, which is going to be a little bit of an odd one. But after Leo, it became Virgo, then Libra, then Scorpio, then Sagittarius, then Capricorn. So every single year, once the nodes have started shifting one sign ahead, something went on, right? So every 19-year period we're looking at here. So the question is, where is Jupiter going to be in 2028? So if we follow this pattern, then it's going to be in the sign of Aquarius, right? And then when we look at where Jupiter was in Cancer, then Capricorn, Cancer and Capricorn, Cancer and Capricorn, Cancer and Capricorn, and it started shifting to Aquarius as well, of course, because of the retrograde motion. And then eventually it went into Aquarius, Leo, Aquarius, Leo, but started shifting into Pisces also and Virgo. And then from 2010 onwards, it's fully Pisces. So if we follow the list, then in 2028, it's going to be in a Virgo. So if the pattern doesn't break, there is a very huge possibility of recession coming up. And probably this is going to be a huge one. And the pattern won't be changing. So 2028, the nodes will be in the sign of Aquarius, and Jupiter will be in the sign of Pisces. Now you can see that we're looking at almost 200 years of data here. So, which is actually very interesting to see how it might be folding out in the next 7 years. Now, this is something I wanted to share for you just to see how the recession might be connecting to the nodal changes, as well as something to do with the planet of Jupiter. Now, this usually affects, of course, the real estate market as well. So that's the reason why I believe that the real estate market will be significantly changing from 2026 to 2028. Altogether, I think it's going to be a record low prices in a sense. But here we are talking about the nodal changes. So I think what we should be expecting, and I'm going to break them down for you going forward with the video. But I think threats and unfortunately terror attacks will be a topic, because I went back a little bit in history and I started looking at what was going on. So the last time when the nodes were exactly in the same position, that was 2003, 2004, and that was the Taurian period. So at that time, actually, the gay marriage legislation happened in Massachusetts. Then one of the most searched topic on internet was that masturbation actually can prevent prostate cancer. So maybe a revolutionary success around prostate cancer might be something significant for us in 2022, especially the revolutionary side, because the nodes will be conjuncting Uranus at one point, which I'm going to be making a separate video about what I'm expecting from Uranus and the nodal changes, because obviously they are going to be happening every 75 years. Also, around that time, US launched a war on Iraq. Now, I mentioned before, Israel and Iraq's chart are very activated by these 23-degree of Neptune-Jupiter conjunction and the nodal changes as well. And also, from an astrological perspective, Sedna was discovered. So we can expect some new planetary energies to be discovered. Now, one thing which I'd like to point out, that it's worth having a look at when the nodes, the North Node, was also in the sign of Scorpio as well, because this is a reversed return of the nodes. And that happened in 2010, 2013 and 2014, from October till October. So within that period of, from May till October, so 2013 May till 2014 October. And actually that was one of the first, that was the period of time when the first legal cannabis stores opened in Colorado. And there were plenty of hacks going on. So, for instance, celebrities' nude pictures came out. There was Robin Williams' suicide, or Bill Cosby's rape scandal came out, and also the environmental protection law got renewed. So, but also there was this Sony hack going on, the Heartbleed hack was also happening. So probably during this period of time, we can expect plenty of hacks. And that is related to the Uranian energy anyway, once Uranus and North Node will be in conjunction. Then I went back 19 years before, which was 1984 to 1986 period. And there was a famine going on in Ethiopia, and the Band Aid and the Live Aid started raising a huge amount of money. So there is going to be a charitable side to these nodal changes. And also the AIDS virus got identified during that period. So I'm also expecting something around maybe revolutionary moment when it comes to AIDS, how to heal it or how to maintain it. I know it can be maintained nowadays, but probably it's going to be taking a next stage. Also, interestingly enough, which is very Scorpionic anyway, that the DNA profiling for forensics started happening in the 80s. So that's very possible how they take fingerprints or these type of crime situations, which is actually Scorpionic energy, can be somehow advanced. Now, when the North Node was in Scorpio, that happened in 1994 and 1995. Actually, that was O.J. Simpson's trial, and probably that was the trial of the century. Kurt Cobain committed suicide, but also this was the birth of Amazon and Yahoo. And there was also a war going on between Serbia and Sarajevo also. So this could be an indication that actually there is going to be a suicidal type of news on the social media channels. Probably it can be affecting Amazon and Yahoo significantly. Whether it's positive or negative, you would need to look at their chart. So if you are investing into those two fields, then you might want to be looking at their specific chart a little bit, because there is definitely going to be affecting them significantly. So, but talking about social media, and I've also mentioned that already with the Neptune-Jupiter cycle, I really can imagine that the social media channels will break up, or at least they're going to have a significant renewal going on. So maybe Instagram and Facebook going to go separate ways, or other social media channels will have joining forces somehow, but I'm expecting some significant changes there too. I can expect, or we should expect, I think new money-making technology matters, maybe a new money popping up in the world. Maybe legislation about sexual identity, that's going to be huge. New movement around environmental protection. probably the home luxuries. So we want to be having our swimming pool, and we want to be having, I don't know, a little gym in our home and so forth. That's also very possible. And I do believe that people are going to start returning to gardening also. But we're going to be breaking this down a little bit further while we go forward in the video. Now, we looked at the nodal changes already briefly with this alignment between Jupiter and Neptune. Now, let's just have a look at what the nodal changes indicate. So the nodes will be reversing into the sign of Taurus at the beginning of January. So meaning that all the eclipses will be happening in Taurus and Scorpio rather than Gemini and Sagittarius, okay? Good news on one hand, Sagittarius, Gemini is a little bit scattered all over the place because it's mutable energy. So now we're going into fixed signs, which is definitely less scattered, but it does focus on stability, security, and financial situation overall. Emotional and financial security. Now, because of the Scorpionic elements, that's where we're going to have Ketu or the South Node. Probably emotionally, this could be a very intense period. Now, the first solar eclipse is going to be happening in the sign of Taurus, and that new moon is going to be conjuncting Uranus and squaring Saturn. So it will be very intense, surely. So that's why I'm not so positive about this Neptune-Jupiter conjunction overall, because the sudden changes might be coming up for us. We know that Pluto, as I mentioned, is in the sign of Capricorn, which is sitting on 29 degrees. So it's kind of like wanting to go into Aquarius. But before it goes, it has to tie up some loose ends. So tearing some old structures down before, or something to do with the resistance, right? It's something to do with removing old power, or just power from the old guard altogether, right? And then after, we're going to have Neptune changing sign 2025, and then Saturn changing sign. So we've got loads happening. I will be sharing something very important as well at the end of the video. So I recommend staying till the end, because I spotted some type of patterns, which will be interesting to look at. So now Taurus and Scorpio are the signs which rules over money, power, and sensuality. So North Node is something to do with your destiny. So it's about discovering your sexual powers or your sensuality, right? Doing things in a healthy, balanced way. That's what always oppositions talk about. So it's about how to embrace this intense feelings and how can I turn it into a talent, Taurus. This is what we're going to have to learn about. I think it could be very much about being more practical a little bit, how I spend my money, or do I need these luxurious items, or these, do I need to build on my fine taste? So, you know, rich versus poor is going to be very emphasized here. But Taurus is also about your senses. So touch, taste, smell, sound, and sight overall. So, you know, some fine music, gifted artists will be popping up with this, surely. Looking at the indulgence, the hedonism is something which is very much we are reminded by this time around. So letting go of some of the, you know, fine art or luxury altogether, and then making, learning to make the most of our money is going to be very, very important. Okay, I think it is also talking about how we can kind of not get seduced or manipulated by certain situations. I think it's a little bit of a nomadic lifestyle, which could be talking about, or how we use, for instance, sex as a weapon, or relying on other people's money, or relying on other countries' money, and then we can't really do that. So Taurus says that we need to simplify things a little bit. We need to ground ourselves when it comes to our daily habits and routines, kind of living in the moment, making pure human connections all together. How we make our livings, these are going to be very significant. Now, of course, the South Node in the sign of Scorpio tells us that we do need to heal some of the past traumas. We need to somehow remove the fears from our life. And not leaving something behind which is actually unresolved. So what could that mean in the world? I think it could mean that we're going to have our own gardens. Maybe we're going to have to stock up a little bit of the pantry, because there is a possibility that there is going to be some type of food issues going on, okay? So, and then you might have started some type of your wounds to be healed, but maybe there is the scab there, so which is very easy to scratch, right? So how I'm going to be healing the scar, the South Node can really talk about that. Also, the South Node in Scorpio is kind of like your default programming as well. So, you know, how I act under stress, do I get stuck in old patterns, or how can I not fall back into these tough situations what I went through? So something to do with your karmic debts needs to be paid back, in a sense, and there needs to be a sudden realization about that. Now, the North Node in the sign of Taurus is definitely thriving for stability, security, or wanting to have luxurious lifestyle, kind of like making up to the losses. So I'm really hoping this is going to be bringing in kind of like some of the businesses start blooming again. Okay, because they were very vulnerable in the last 2 years. So now just practical ways to build up some type of businesses. I think it is also very possible for plenty. Taurus represents the food, the family, the finances all together, how we make bread. So I do believe that homemade products is going to be also a little bit more significant. Like people are going to be making bread, they're going to be raising their chicken at home and all those type of things. In the financial world, on a world scale, I'd like to point out that North Node was in the sign of Taurus when the euro got introduced. So I'm expecting some type of changes around the euro. Remember that the North Node and the South Node have got a return every 18, 19 years. So we're talking about 2003-ish. That was the time when euro started becoming kind of like a worldwide currency overall, okay? So I think on a personal level, it's about taking care of your physical body. Probably it's about work patterns as well, how we make money. And I think that might be a huge topic. How much money we get, how much the minimum wage should be. Some type of speculations in the financial market will be happening significantly. But the Taurus North Node is telling you to do something around self-love and maybe not becoming so stubborn and defensive about something. So from a personal point of view, those who were born in 2003, 2004, 1984, 1986, 1966 to 1967, 1947, 1949, somewhere around those periods, those people will be having this effect the most. Now, the reason is because it means that you've got a nodal return happening. So the nodal return is very much about awakening of your mission in life, basically. So what's the sole purpose? And therefore, it's going to be telling you that you need to review some of the lessons around traumatic experiences from the past, and then basically creating a new path for yourself. So, somehow finding your place in the earth or in the world. So it could really talk about, for instance, new jobs for plenty of those who were born around those times. Now, those are who are having actually an inverse nodal return, which means that the North Node will be conjuncting South Node and so forth. Well, those are going to be people born in 2012 to 2014, 1994, 1995, 75, 76, 56 to 58. Now, I'm not giving you the exact dates, but mostly this is always talking about the second part of the year as a beginner. Now, those are typically about facing some type of challenges which is originated from the past. So it's very much about upgrading your skills, looking at your personal gains, okay, or looking at some of your repetitive behavior patterns overall, which is actually hindering you from moving forward. Those going to be very prominent for those, okay? So now the North Node, as I said, in Taurus is family oriented surely, right? So how we get married, how we relate to each other, how you establish yourself with your spouse, very possible. Actually, divorce rate can be something which is growing during this period of time, or people who want to be making their home look nicer. I really can imagine, because the North Node is something which is connecting significantly to property management. So I think the property prices will start dropping a little bit. But it's very possible that we want to be just wanting to sell our homes, right? Because we want to be letting go of, we want to be gaining some type of financial security through our properties. That's kind of possible, okay? Now, from a past life perspective, Scorpio is very much about the hidden agendas. So in the sign of Scorpio, it's very possible that, for instance, you lived a secret life and then that's going to get highlighted this time around, okay? Another significant trait is that security and safety. So Taurus North Node always wants to learn about safety and how to be protected. So actually the security systems might be something which is going to be thriving from 2022 onwards. So meaning that, I don't know, everyone is going to build in an alarm about burglars, or actually the crime numbers can be increasing significantly, especially from stealing and so forth. But it might be just that your decorating skills will be, enhanced, and then you're going to do things manually, or you want to be renovating your home. So something to do with the building and the construction work might start thriving as well. Now, definitely Taurus talks about your talents. So this time around, it's about developing a talent for yourself so that you can live up to your fullest potential altogether. So question the North Node might be asking you, what is your talent around the topic, wherever it's going to be transiting? In my case, it's going to be in the 3rd and the 9th house. So practical knowledge versus a broadened horizon, and how I share that with others. Okay, so you might want to be looking at that for yourself. Okay, now the problem with these nodal changes, especially in Taurus and Scorpio, that none of these signs like changes, right? So we tend to be bringing some type of obstacles into our life, and it aligns with the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, so it brings obstacles in a way to our spiritual growth also. So it does tell you that you need to obtain some different perception, spiritual perception, going with the flow as well, so that you can eventually grow in a sense. I also believe that when it comes to things like self-employment, that's going to be also something which is, which is going to be emphasized here, okay? Now, from a spiritual perspective, North Node and the South Node is very much about blending the two worlds, right? So the spiritual world, the Scorpionic, and the Taurus, which is the physical world. How are we going to balance that out? By the way, according to modern astrology, Taurus is actually the sign of Earth. So how I am going to be protecting the Earth, Scorpio is toxins. So how I'm going to be removing the toxic situations and the toxins from the Earth and from our life as well. I think that's going to be, you know, something mentioned here. So saving the world, economic fights for money, for power, probably very good or very important. And I also looked at a little bit of the world map, and this is going to be hitting Poland, Germany, the US significantly. So I'm expecting some financial situations around those places. Now, of course, I don't want to tell you what you should be doing with your own money, but it might be telling you that a little bit of a saving doesn't necessarily hurt. And of course, it does tell you that, you know, that being cautious a little bit about money, what you invest into and so forth is something you need to be considering for from next year onwards. Taurus and Scorpio. Scorpio is actually the dustbin, the garbage. So I think recycling is going to be a huge topic, and it might be something it will be worth investing into as well, because somehow the saving the world energy is going to be more emphasized from 2022 onwards. Remember Jupiter and Neptune conjunction, that's saving the world as well. And then Taurus and Scorpio, the dustbin, and how we empty the dustbin, Scorpio, and making it useful, Taurus. I think it's going to be a huge topic. So I can imagine some type of regulations around that also. Now, it's also very possible that our values and purchasing trends will be changing also. And let's not forget that North Node will be making a Uranus conjunction as well, sometimes in the middle of the year. So towards the end of the year, sorry. So probably how we spend money will be changing significantly. Also, I think it could be affecting the strength of currencies in a positive or negative way, probably maybe in a positive way, or at least the nations will try to make their currency strength, I mean, the strength of their currency a lot better. Of course, it talks about the budgets and how we're trading as well. So maybe the trading between countries will be also changing significantly as well. So this is my overview on Neptune, Jupiter, and the nodal changes in 2022. I hope you have got plenty to think about. I hope you have liked the video, and if you did so, then please press like, subscribe to the channel. As I mentioned, this was part one, because in the next video, I will be examining a little bit Jupiter sign change going into Aries in the middle of the year, and then it's going to be making conjunctions to Chiron. So I will be looking at that. Also, I want to be looking at Mars retrograde period also in the sign of Gemini, which is going to be taking place at the second part of the year, basically from 20th of August onwards. And I'm also going to be making a part 3 video, which is going to be about the Uranus and North Node conjunction. So we can look at a little bit on the history side, as well as what we should be expecting in 2022/2023. So there is a lot more to cover for the upcoming year, and then after we are going to be focusing on the individual signs, so you know how to prepare for the year ahead. So thank you everyone for choosing me and staying with me, and hope to see you on another video. Bye bye.